Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Bluebeam review for Municipalities webinar. My name is Alan Biermacher, and I am the Customer Success Manager here at Digital Drafting Systems. And I have with us here today Ari Rejtman, who is our AEC Technical Specialist and Bluebeam Certified Instructor to present today. Ari, go ahead and jump over to that next slide for me. So just some information for you guys here. All attendees will be muted during the presentation. If you do have any questions that come up through the presentation, please send them over in the chat box or the questions box. This webcast will be recorded and sent out after this presentation, as well as it should be available on our YouTube channel by this afternoon, if not tomorrow. Bluebeam trainings are available, so please contact us for more information on that front. And as the presentation goes or after, if you have any questions, please give us a call at 305-445-6480 or shoot us an email at info@ddscad.com. And so without further ado, I'll turn it over to Ari. Go ahead, Ari, take it away.
Oh, thank you very much, Alan. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all. My name is Ari. I'm a Bluebeam certified instructor, and it's going to be a pleasure to show you guys how Bluebeam Review works for municipalities in particular. We're going to look at receiving submittals, signing and preparing documents, comparisons, and overlays. And let's get into a very special slide before we get into the main presentation. An article was written back in March by Revu, or by Bluebeam, and they're talking about why the city of Miami is using Bluebeam Review and how it's helping them to design a 3-phase project called the Signature Bridge. It's going to help alleviate a lot of congestion in Miami. So there are 3 phases of the project, and they're going to be using all of their documents in studio projects and sessions. They'll use projects to house all their documents and retrieve them and allow people to submit when they need to. And then they'll use sessions to actually do their markups and allow people to work on the same PDF at the same time. So it's a really, really cool project, and you guys can read more about that article here in this link. And I just wanted to share that with you guys before we got into the real presentation for today. So we have some benefits, of course, for using Review. And for municipalities in general, we basically can showcase the best practices for digital reviews. That's what I'm going to go over today to show you guys the best ways to use the functions in the program. At the same time, we'll improve our paperless workflows. We're going to sign and seal multiple pages in the same PDF set. And if we wanted to, different pages in different PDF sets at the same time with the batch tools, you'll need Review Extreme to use them. We're going to identify changes and revisions quickly with the comparison and overlay tools. We'll be able to communicate with our clients both internally and externally. So we'll be able to use studio projects and sessions for that. And of course, we can reduce the size of our PDFs with some functionality in the program too if you need to send something via email and it's too big. We're going to save some commonly used markup tools to our tool sets and basically deploy them across all our departments and standardize all of our tools. That's a really big goal, and it's very easy to share your tools and your profiles. Make sure that whenever you need to use somebody else's computer in your office, that you don't have to look for all the functions. You'll know exactly where everything is. And we're going to track and share all of our markup data from Review to spreadsheets. It's a very, very important thing, and we'll use our markups list and the quantity takeoffs portion of it to really get that going. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll talk about Govbug. We have some government Bluebeam user groups that are dotted all around the US, and there isn't a chapter yet in South Florida. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I'll talk more about it later on. For now, let's go on to the next slide. And here's the overview of today's webinar. We're going to, of course, look at profiles and our tool chest, probably the 2 most common things that we ever talk about in any of these webinars. We're going to learn how to share our profiles, standardize our tool sets, and we'll learn what drawing mode is versus properties mode. Then we'll get into signing and sealing. It's a very important step that all of you need to do, especially on the government standpoint. You guys need to receive a lot of documents. So we're going to be talking about how we can receive documents, the instructions you need to give to your clients to submit properly, and that way you guys can save time and not have too much of a headache when you're dealing with electronic signing. Then we'll get into studio projects and sessions. Of course, I'll show you guys how we can use projects as a great archiving tool, and we'll use sessions to collaborate on the same PDF at the same time, of course. Very, very useful function. One of the main reasons why people get Review over other PDF management software. And we'll look at forms at the end. We'll talk about form mode, what is form mode, and how do we automatically create form fields with Review Extreme. And without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to hide my webcam so you guys can see the maximum screen. So let's do that. And now let's switch over to Review. So I have Bluebeam Review open and I have this PDF open. So let's get started with profiles. We need to make sure that all of our different tools are organized in a way that improves functionality and maximizes on our viewing space in the center. Right now, my profile minimizes viewing space. I have 3 lines of tools at the top that are kind of blocking my way, but it does maximize in functionality because I can open up my side panels with tool chests and different tools, and then I can have properties open or even the measurements panel open. And what's nice about that is if I have a tool selected, such as this area tool right here, then the properties changes and I can immediately change that tool in the tool chest. I don't have to bring it onto my drawing and then change it. So that can save me some time. At the same time, we also have the measurement panel, and this allows us to set different criterion for our measurements in particular. And this area measurement, we can assign a depth to it, which is the same thing as a thickness or a height. So for example, this depth right now is set to 8 feet. For concrete, I'd probably set it to 6 inches. So I can change that right now to inches or feet and inches if I wanted to. I'll just do inches. I'm just going to type 6. If it was feet and inches, I'd have to type in the actual apostrophe symbol and the quote symbol. So that'll work, and now I change that immediately, and I don't have to worry about changing it on the drawing itself. So this is where we can maximize functionality with this kind of profile, where all of our tools are at the top, and then we have some side panels on the left and the right. Now, while I'm talking to you guys, my screen is flashing a little bit. I think I'm having a bit of a monitor issue, but I think everything's fine now. So let me show you another profile, one that comes by default with the program. So we go to the Review dropdown, mouse over profiles, and the first one is Review. And this profile maximizes on viewing space because there are no functions at the top of the screen. There's only our major functions on the left, and some shortcuts that were at the top of my screen earlier are now on the right side. And this could be useful for some purposes, but let me show you a bit of a better compromise so that you can get good viewing space and maximize functionality, because now I can't modify tools in the tool chest easily. I can't have 2 side panels open at the same time, especially if they're on the same side. So they're all on the left in this case. We're going to go back to Review, Profiles, and let's go to Review Advanced. And this one starts off with 1 or 2 lines of tools at the top of the screen, and it already splits our functionality. So it's good to have our main function split on the left and the right, and our other tools can be at the top, and you can turn on as many as you need. So I'll show you some recommendations. If you right-click next to a group of tools, such as this one right here, I can right-click, and I can see almost all of the different tool sets that are part of the program. And the ones that I have currently turned on are ones that I recommend that almost everybody has turned on. More than likely, you'll be using tools from these groups. So advanced and advanced text are great. Control point isn't necessary because you can emulate that with the shift key. And of course, these 4 are very important to document management, edit and file, and so on and so forth. Now, there are 3 major toolbars that are missing from that list. So I'm going to show you where we can find them. We can go to the Tools dropdown, mouse over toolbars, and here they are, the status bar, navigation bar, and properties toolbar. And by default, the status bar is turned off if you install the program for your first time and open it up. So I recommend everybody turns it on. It's this bottommost bar here that starts with the word ready and ends with these 6 functions that are very, very important and that we can toggle on or off whenever we need their functionality or if we don't need them. So for example, we can turn on a grid down here and we can snap to it with these 2 functions. I don't use it very often, but the grid is kind of cool. And you can change the grid spacing in the preferences. So you can go to the Review dropdown and click on Preferences, and I'll show you where that is a little bit later. More importantly, I recommend that everybody turns on Snap to Content. This allows you to measure properly. If you're trying to measure from the exact corner of a room, for example, you want to make sure that you snap properly. And this room is a good example because it has this line here, and we don't want to snap from this line. We want to snap from this intersection here. So now that Snap to Content is turned on, if I use a line tool or almost any markup tool, then if I mouse over that line, we get this nice little square that pops up. When the square is empty, that means I'm on any random part of the line. And then when the square turns blue at an intersection or at the midpoint of a line, so this is the midpoint of this line, and here's an intersection right here, or at endpoints of lines, then we know that we are actually on a specific snap. And these snaps are similar to AutoCAD and Revit snaps. So now I know that I can draw exactly from this corner to this corner down here, for example. And I wouldn't really be able to do that without turning Snap to Content on right down here. Now, next to Snap to Content on the right of it is snap to markup. And snap to markup isn't as useful. It allows you to snap, of course, to other markups. So I'm going to scroll up here and I'm going to use the line tool again. And I can move my mouse over basically, oh yes, I have to turn it on first. That would be important. I can move my line over any part of these markups here, and we can see the snaps are popping up again at the midpoints, endpoints, and intersections. Even these curved clouds are actually real objects. They're not just visual placeholders. And so we can snap to any part of the cloud that we want to, including their intersections, such as that one, and so on and so forth. The problem with snap to markup is if you leave it on all the time, all these little guidelines will appear when you try to draw in between things, because Revu wants you to draw in reference to other markups. So instead of doing that, we can turn snap to markup off, and now we have much more freedom to draw wherever we need to. And it's not very common that we draw from markup to markup. Usually we're drawing from a blank area to something on the sheet. So snap to content is much more commonly used. The fifth function is reuse markup tools. If you guys haven't turned that on, I recommend that everybody turns it on. It forces you to learn a new workflow that gives you more flexibility. It allows you to essentially draw objects repeatedly without having to click on the function again. So I'm going to draw. All right. So like I was saying, I can repeatedly draw lines over and over and over again. And there's no issues because I can basically continue this indefinitely. Now, the scary part is if you're using this for your first time, how do you stop drawing lines? How do you just go back to having a regular cursor so that you can click on things and select other things? All you have to do is press the escape key. So if you're familiar with programs like AutoCAD or Revit, it'll be very easy for you. If you're not, don't worry. Just have your left hand ready next to the escape key so that when you're done creating text or measurements, just press the escape key and you're good to go. So I'm just going to use the select tool down here. And this also allows me to now click and hold and drag to make a nice big box. And I can select many markups at the same time and do what I want with them. In this case, I'm just going to press the delete key and delete them. Now, what if I had reuse markup tools off? Well, every single time I make a line, it deselects the function. My cursor is back to normal. And if I want to make a second line, I have to click on line and do it again, and click on line and do it again. And this is why we keep reuse markup tools turned on, and we just use the escape key to control when we're done creating markups. So we can make as many as we need to very quickly. And the last function down here is synchronized views. It allows us to look at two different views at the same time and allow them to move towards each other. So I'm going to click on this button down here in the bottom left to split my screen vertically. Now, if I navigate on one part of the screen, the other screen moves at the same time. So the views are synchronized. And you can change how that works with the drop down down here to go between page or document. The difference between them is that synchronized page works very well between different pages in the same PDF set. So if I go to my thumbnails list, I have 6 pages, and synchronized views is going to work very well with all 6 pages. If I switch to another page, then the other pages maintain whichever page they're on, and you can just continue moving. Now, synchronized document works very well between other PDFs and other documents. So if I switch now to document, it forces me to look at the same PDF page at the same time if it's part of the same PDF set. But if I was looking at 2 different documents and looking at 2 different PDFs, then it would be a whole nother story. And so there you go. And now you guys have proof that I'm a BCI since 2018. All right. Let's get back into the first page. I'm going to close my view over here, switch back to synchronized page because it's a bit more flexible. And let's get back into it. So that's basically how we can organize our profile to become the best that it can be. And I recommend using the same tools that I have, and you can turn on or off certain functions that you need from here. And that way you can have just about 2 or 1 lines of tools at the top of your screen so that your viewing space is maximized. Now, I'm not a big proponent of that. I like to zoom in whenever I need to work on my stuff. So I'm going to go back to my profile. I basically have every single tool turned on for visibility's sake and for teaching people how they all work. And there we go. All right. So what do we do with our profiles once we make them perfect? And how do we standardize them so that everybody in the office is using them together? We go to the Review dropdown, mouse over Profiles, go to Manage Profiles, and then we select our profile and we click on Export. It's a small little file with the extension .bpx, so you can put it on a USB drive, send it to each other via email, put it on your server for retrieval. I recommend that you copy your files to the server after saving at least 1 local file on your computer so that Revu is retrieving data from your computer and not from your server. If your server has an outage, or if you guys lose electricity, or if you lose internet, then you won't be able to retrieve your profile or your tools, and all your functions will look a little bit funny. So, but you can definitely share them on your servers. That's a good function for that. All right, let's go back to our PowerPoint for a second and let's see what's next. Let's see if I missed anything. Let's talk about the tool chest now and look at drawing mode versus properties mode. So our tool chest is found right here, like I showed you guys earlier. And there's two different ways that we can use our markups. And for government agencies, you guys won't be using too many markups. You will be measuring from what I've heard from some of our clients. And so more importantly, what if you wanted to place an exact measurement a few times over and over again? Well, all you have to do is make the measurement first and save it to your tool chest. And then in the tool chest, I'm going to go to this length measurement right here, and I'm going to double click on it. Now it looks exactly like the measurement that I placed a long time ago. And it just so happens to be this one right here. It says 0 feet right now because I haven't placed it yet. And as soon as I do, it's going to pick up on my scale. And now, according to Revu and according to the scale, this is a 30-foot dimension. So I could take this and I could place this as many times as I need to in whichever areas I need to. Now, more importantly, how do we make measurements with the same properties? So what if we still like that same magenta color, if we have a specific font that we're using, for example? How do we use measurements, but we just want to measure again? We want to measure a different area. So all we have to do is double click once again on our tool, and we can see the tool symbol above it. So it's showing that nice little purple grid and the length measurement here. And we can't really see what data is associated with the length measurement because it's in properties mode. And so this is properties mode. And when we have it as an exact copy, we call that drawing mode. So in properties mode, for example, I can now draw a length measurement from here to here. And there we go. And that's a brand new measurement using the same properties. Not all properties transfer. For example, you may have noticed that the text has moved back in between the lines. If I was to use this one once again, let me switch it to carbon copy mode or drawing mode. There we go. So this one has the text above the line because that's how I saved it. So it doesn't save everything. It also doesn't save this leader line here. But if you guys needed your text to look more standard, you can basically select your length measurement, go to properties, and we have these captions down here. We can click on or uncheck the box for show caption leader line to get rid of this teeny line that was right there. So now if your text is not in between the lines, there's no need for a caption leader line. We can also click on edit next to caption and we can show different criteria that's associated with that measurement. So we can even show the depth of this length measurement if we had one, and the wall area if we have a depth and if we're calculating for wall area. So that's quite useful. I could turn those on if I wanted to. You can assign depth just like I showed you guys earlier by going to the measurements panel. This one just happens to have a default depth of 8 feet because that's how I saved this length measurement when I made it. So you can basically calculate some wall areas as a result of knowing the depth or height and the length, of course. That's actually what I've done with this wall area right here. So this is a 10-foot tall wall. The D equals 10 foot, and the length is 9 foot 2 1/4. And so if I go to my markups list, this is still selected, and I'm going to scroll to the right. The cost to paint this wall, if paint was to cost, let me tell you how much paint costs, $2.50. It's going to cost $229.66 to paint just this wall, if the wall was 10 feet tall. So I'll show you guys how to perform some cost analysis probably in another webinar. It's going to be a little too lengthy for this one, and I don't think that many government municipalities need to do that too often. All right, let's move on. Let us go back to our PowerPoint and see what's next. Let's get into signing and sealing. I think that's a very big topic that a lot of you are here to learn in particular. So let's go back into it. So signing and sealing has a lot of little details associated with it, but it's not too daunting. It's not too difficult once you've set things up for success. So down here, I have some signature fields that I created earlier. Usually what people do is they go to Tools and Signature and they click on Sign Document. The problem with doing this is when you make your new signature field, it immediately forces you to sign it. And what if you didn't like the size of the field or you want to adjust it to make it a little bit better? Well, now that I've clicked out of that dialog and pressed the escape key, these signature fields are light blue. And so if I right click on them, nothing happens except sometimes they turn kind of empty like this. And so I can't right click on them. And if I click on them, I'm forced to sign. So how do I delete a signature field and how can I modify them? It's actually very easy. You have to go into your signatures panel and you have to, instead of using sign document, just use Add Signature Field. This is a better tool because it's a lot more flexible. So when we click on it, we've activated something, which I was going to talk about later, but it actually has a lot to do with signing. We've activated form mode. Forms can be accessed by pretending to create another form field. So signature fields are part of forms. Or if we are in our Forms tab right here, which you will not see if you don't have Review Extreme, but if you do have Review Extreme, you'll have this tab. And you can select all the different form fields. So I can click on text 1, for example. It kind of zooms in on it, doesn't really put it centered on the screen, but it's here in the upper left corner, and it highlights it. And so if I go to signature 5, now I've activated form mode and selected the signature at the same time. There's a couple of ways that we can do that. So now I can right click on this and I can delete it. So when we signing one document is usually very easy. And basically once we set that up, that's not really a big deal. The bigger problem is when we need to sign more than 50 pages or 100 pages and we need to use the batch tools. And we have figured out a new workaround for how do we insert different images or seals or different things in the background. So I'll show you guys that very soon. First, let me just show you basic signing just in case this is your first time or if you're curious. So we can click on a signature field just like this. Then we just need to sign in with our password. If you or your clients are using third-party authentication, then they won't need to log in this way. As soon as they actually sign, they're going to need to log in through their third-party program or company. So for example, IdenTrust is one of the more common ones, and an IdenTrust dialog will pop up and it'll ask you to sign in. Good, so I've signed in. My ID was made with Bluebeam Review itself. So I have second-party authentication, which for municipalities is usually not enough to be verified. And most of you all are requiring third-party authentication. So if you guys need to, if anybody here is not a municipality, look into using any of the third-party authentication companies that your municipality recommends. And I know that IdenTrust is one of them. All right, so when we sign, we can choose between two different options. We have digital signature and document certification. If we're using third-party authentication, then digital signature is all we need. However, if you want to prevent people from changing your document or being able to extract its contents or copy its contents, using document certification is usually a bit better. Now, we can click on this drop-down that document certification allows us, and we can say that we don't want any changes to be allowed. Now, if you're submitting to a municipality, this is usually not a good idea because most municipalities need to be able to measure on top of it or to sign afterwards. So if you're expecting a municipality to sign afterwards, then you'll want to choose the second or the third option. So filling in forms and digital signatures is a good option. And if you want to be very in particular and you want to be very flexible, then allowing for markups, which includes measurements, is also very good. So let's do the third one so that we're expecting the municipality to measure afterwards. Then if there's any legal text that you need to provide, you can put it under the reason area right here. I hereby sign and seal, for example, and I just put this as a placeholder. And then we can click on edit to edit our appearance. By default, Bluebeam's logo is turned on. So usually we don't want to show that, so we can always turn off logo. Then under the text area, we can choose what information is going to be shown. So name and date is usually all you need. If you do have legal text, you can turn on reason and type in your legal text in the reason area in the previous dialog. And then the graphic area is useful because now we can switch between our name in big bold letters next to the regular digitally signed by name. So we'll see our name twice. Or we can say none. And this is actually a very useful option that we're going to be demonstrating very soon. And then we also have file. And file allows us to put our seal and associate it with our signature directly. Now, let's say that you're about to use the batch tools. And let's say that you either have your seal as a PDF or an image that's separate from your signature itself, but you still want to include it as part of the signature. Another option would be that you have your seal already on your PDF. This means that it is not really part of your signature, but if you sign on top of it, that's usually good enough for a municipality. But let me show you guys the other option. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a new signature appearance. So I'm gonna click on cancel. I'm gonna click on new. And now this is how it looks by default. So I'm gonna set this up for me. And I'm gonna turn all of my text options off. I'm gonna literally have a blank signature. It's gonna say none as well. Because all my data is found in my seal, my name, my if I was an engineer, my PE number, for example. So I'm going to call this no text underscore stamp only, because we're going to include our stamp in the batch process right now. So now I'm going to click OK. This one is completely blank, and that's fine because all our info is in the stamp, for example, if that was the case. So now I'm just going to click on cancel because the appearance is already set. I don't want to sign this document right now. I'm going to use the batch tools instead. So we're going to go to the batch dropdown and click on sign and seal. Now we always have to save our files. So this is what this prompt is asking me. It's a good idea. And now that we're saving, the batch dialog pops up. We can now choose which pages we're going to sign from this dropdown here. We can also just click inside and type in any pages we wanted to. I think in this instance, I'm just going to sign page 1, so I'll just type in the number 1. If I wanted to sign pages 1 through 4, I could type -4 to get all those pages as well. Let's just do page 1, and if I had another document that I wanted to sign, I can click on Add, and I can add not only files, but a folder. So if I was prepared ahead of time, I could have all my PDFs that I'm about to sign in one folder and just add the entire folder all at once. That can save a lot of time if you're required to submit your files as separate PDF files. Some municipalities don't allow you to have multiple PDFs in one PDF set. So if that's the case, you can do that, have all your separate PDFs in one folder, and you're good to go. Let's click on Next. Now this is the real batch dialog with all of our little data, and this is where the important part comes out. So what we have is at the top is digital signatures is turned on, and this allows us to place our appearance wherever we need to. So for example, let me switch to an appearance that actually has some data, this one. And so I can move this basically anywhere I need to. So once I have that ready, it's going to be placed in the same place on all my subsequent pages. So it's good if you have a title block that has all your data. So for example, I have a little stamp section right here, so I can place mine right there. Now, we do have an option for a date. If we turn that on, it's actually a separate entity. Let me move this stamp because I'll show you guys how that works very soon. But we actually have this little date right here. And that could be a separate entity if we wanted to. Now, more than likely, that's not the case. I haven't seen any of our clients do that, so we're going to turn that off. Now, more importantly, at the bottom, we have seal. I actually have it turned on already. Here is my seal. And this is the important part, because if you want to include your seal properly when you use the batch tools, you'll want to include it this way. If you try to include your seal with the actual signature itself, like, for example, my seal right here, then sometimes you're going to have sizing issues where the text and the seal will stretch out too much. Certain seals are made in different ways, so you might have some bugs. And that's why we made an appearance with no text, stamp only. And it's empty. We can't really see the appearance, but it's okay. We have the box right here. I know where it is. And I'm going to put it basically on top of my actual stamped seal. So I'll put the stamp behind it right there. Let me zoom in so you guys can see what I'm doing. And there we go. And now I have my stamp here. And so for somebody receiving this document, they're going to see this nice rectangle box here. The stamp won't really be clickable. It will be part of the signature, but the stamp will just be there visually. And the actual data, this empty box will be there. And that's where they can get information about the digital ID. This is how they can validate signatures. So it's very important to essentially place that on top of your stamp. And now we have the best of both worlds. So we have our stamp with all of our info, and we have our placeholder signature box that has all of our data, but doesn't override or cover the stamp in any way. So this is great. Now we're ready to go. We can make sure that we choose our files down here. So here's the example floor plan. It should just do page 1, even though it says 1 of 6 here. It should just still do page 1 because we chose that earlier. Let's test that right now by clicking OK. Now, when using the batch process, be very careful, because what it does is it tends to overwrite the file. And so we need to be very careful when using the batch process, because there won't really be a way for us to undo it. So here it is. Now the signature here, when I mouse over it, everything seems normal. If I click on it, there's that same box. So the stamp and the seal are linked, but they're not really the same entity, so we can avoid any visual errors that we might get if we try to include them as part of our signature. And this is a great workaround. And there we go. We can go to our signatures panel. Now let's go back into your shoes. I'm going to pretend that I'm a municipality now that just received this document. I need to check two things, whether it's third-party authenticated or whether it's a valid signature. So firstly, I can click on validate signatures up here and it refreshes it. And if I see a green icon with a check, that means the signature is valid. Or I could see a piece of paper with a blue icon, and that means that it's valid, but it's also certified. Now, how can I really tell? I can click on this plus sign right here. The signature is valid. We can see the time that it was all checked in and checked out and the last time it was used. And this authority area is very important. So we'll click on the plus sign. And this is where I can tell immediately that it is not third-party authenticated because I am my own authority. And if that's the case, this signature was created with Bluebeam Review, and I am the second party. The first party is Bluebeam Review itself. So if that's the case, and I'm a municipality that requires third-party authentication, then this is not going to work. I'm going to need to contact one of those companies, such as Identities, get a special digital ID from that company. And then once that's installed properly into Revu, I would use that instead of a Bluebeam digital ID. So if it was with Identities, for example, I believe the authority is called IGCA1 or IGCA3, and that's how you can tell. So if you see the client's name here, it's definitely second party authenticated. But their name is also important. You might see it as part of it, such as signed by. So that's definitely still signed by the client. Okay, perfect. So that's how that works. Now let me undo this. I believe what I've done is I've completely overwritten my current working file. And so the problem with that is I will never be able to really work on this properly because the document is kind of protected against most changes. Now I should be able to still place markups because I allowed it, but still. So what I'm going to do is, because I did just make a grandiose mistake, kind of on purpose to show you guys the worst case scenario. Yeah, so I just wanted to check. Yep, it says that my document is signed. There's my signature. So I've overwritten my original document, and I'll never be able to really work on this properly again. Luckily, I've sent this document by email several times, so I'm going to retrieve it from an email very quickly while I'm talking to you guys. And this is a big lesson for all of us to learn, that when we use the batch tool, make sure that you copy your file first, put it into a different folder. I would also rename it with something slightly different at the end of the file, such as _DS for digitally signed. Then use the batch tool, then sign, and that way your old file will be saved forever. So never just go and sign. Definitely make sure to copy your file first before you sign. Now, let me go into my sent emails because luckily I'll be training somebody tomorrow and I sent him a copy of this file. So I'm going to save it right here. Let me close out of this one and I'm going to delete it. So bear with me, guys. Thanks for your patience. This should be done in just a second. So I'll get rid of this and this. Good. Ah, yes, it's in use somehow by something. So let me cancel this. Good. Now let me download this file, put it in the right place, and then we'll get right back into it. Okay, I think that we're good to go now. Let's open it from here and see what happens. Beautiful. No signatures, no problem. All right, great. Okay. Oh, why is my markups list not closing? Interesting. Okay, great. So that's fine. We've got our file back. And hopefully that doesn't happen to you guys. Now you guys know from this example to always copy your files before signing them. Okay, perfect. Now let's get back into it. Let's actually go back into our PowerPoint and see what's next. Sharing our digital ID certificate. So this is also a very important part of the signing process. Let me show you guys what I mean by that. So it's not just enough that a client will sign a file and then send it to a municipality, because when you guys try to validate their signature, it's going to say signer's identity unknown. I actually have a file from my colleague that demonstrates exactly this. Let me open it up for you guys and show you what I mean. Yep, it should be this one. So this one was signed by Alan, our host, and he basically signed this on purpose without attaching his digital ID. So when I click on validate signatures, it says signer's identity unknown. And that's because I technically do not trust Alan because his digital signature is not in my trusted identities list. Also under authority, signed by Alan, so he used Bluebeam Review to do this. And so I need his digital ID, and how can I get it? Well, let me show you from my end, my digital ID. What I've done is I've attached it to my page. So it's right here on the bottom left. It's this nice little file with a .cer extension for .certificate. And so all I did is I went to Tools, File Attachment, and I looked for that file. Now, where is this file usually? Because we have to get the file first before we attach it to the document. So let's go back a couple steps. We need to go to our Tools dropdown, Signature, and Digital IDs. Once an ID is either installed into Revu if it's third party or created with Revu if it's second party, then it's going to be in this list. So all of our IDs will be here. So we can click on our ID in the list and then click on Export. It's a nice small .cr file. Save it to our computers. Here's mine, and then you're good to go. Now, what also happens is our digital IDs go into a trusted identities list. So we go back to Tools and Signature, and we have trusted identities. So there's my ID. I trust myself, of course. So there is my digital ID. And if I needed to, I can click on the plus sign and add other people's digital IDs to that list as well. And I can also get rid of them. I can click on this and click on properties to see some information about it. Now, this dialog box, you guys might see this very commonly. This is not a dialog box associated with Bluebeam Revu. It's actually a Windows dialog box that will pop up, and it gives you the option to install your digital ID onto your computer. This isn't necessary. So for example, I'm getting this error that says the CA root certificate is not trusted. It's very scary, but I don't have to worry because I don't need it to be installed on my computer. I just need it to be installed in Bluebeam Revu. But if you get third-party authentication, more than likely you'll be forced to install it on your computer as well, which is not a bad idea. It doesn't hurt at all. Okay, great. So that's all the info we need there. So now let's say that I was submitting to a city. I need to attach it to my file. So I go back to Tools and File Attachment, and then I find it. For example, I'm just going to attach another file here. Let's attach the file that Alan signed. Why not? So now my cursor is ready. I have this little plus sign here, and I can just click, and I can place it. And by default, it looks like a paperclip. I want to change the icon so that the icon doesn't continuously get bigger and smaller as I zoom in and out from the file. I want it to be a fixed size, just like this icon here. So I can click on my properties wheel right here. And I have this still highlighted. If not, I can just click on it. There it is. And under icon, we can choose graph, which is definitely not what we want because it also gets smaller and bigger. And file icon is the answer. And that one looks really, really nice. It's a fixed icon. It actually looks like the file icon itself. And now I can identify what it is a lot easier. Now we don't need this anymore, so I'm going to right click and delete it because I've already attached my digital ID right here. Now, let's say that I just received this file and I'm a municipality once again. What do I do with this file once I get it? Well, I can open up my properties and I can click on extract right here. I don't want to open it because opening it will show me that previous data that allows me to install it on my computer. Instead, I just need to save as. Save it somewhere on your computer, and then you can also save a copy on your server. And then you'll want to place the one that's local on your computer in your trusted identities list. So once again, you go to Tools, Signature, Trusted Identities, and you click on the plus sign, and then you can just find it. And so that's how that works. Once that's in, you should be able to validate anybody's signature as long as they're in your trusted identities list. And once that process is done once, if that client continuously is signing other documents, you don't need to do that process again. Their digital ID is there in your trusted identities list. The only time they'll need to do it again is if their digital ID expires, which is usually every 2 years. Okay, I'm looking at the time and we don't have too much time, but we'll take about 10 minutes for questions. So let's get back to the webinar or the PowerPoint presentation. Let's see what I'm missing. I think that Studio is the last thing to show, and I can show it relatively quickly. So let's get right into Studio. So we can find Studio by going to the little house icon here on the bottom left. We're going to be asked to sign in. Let me sign in really quickly. Usually it remembers your ID, but I believe I cleaned my PC recently. So let me type in my email really quick. And click on next. If this is your first time, by the way, just click on create account. And I recommend that your Bluebeam display name is the same as your first and last name for ease of use. So let me type this in, sign in. I need to type a different variation of my password. Perfect. All right. So now that I'm signed in, I see the studio words right here, and I can click on that dropdown, and this is how I can sign out if I wanted to. The two buttons up here are very important. We have projects and sessions. Projects is the archiving tool that has no limitations on space. Basically, I have this nice little website right here. This is Bluebeam's FAQ. And projects basically has unlimited restraints. So as we can see in this column, there are basically no limits to projects. You can even upload different file types. So it could be Word documents, AutoCAD and Revit files, many Excel files, and you can basically put them in projects for safekeeping. Obviously, Revu can't view them, but that's not a big deal because you can at least have them up there for storage. So I'm not going to get too deep into projects. It's basically a check-in, check-out system, and only one person can work in a project at once. I'll demonstrate that very quickly before we get into sessions to close off. Let me close my local file so we don't get confused. I'm actually going to leave it open so you can see the difference between a local file and a project file. So I'm going to open up this project file. Project files have a lock next to their name. So now I can tell which file is local and which file is in a project. And session files are similar, but they have a different icon. They won't have a lock. So I can distinguish between all three kinds of files. So this project file is in view mode. If I click on a markup, I cannot modify it. Everything is grayed out in properties. I can't add markups either. All of this is grayed out. So we need to check out the file. So I'm going to click on the lock icon and check it out. Now only I can work on the file. Other people can view it, but not in real time. So I'd have to upload my work when I'm done. So for example, if I get rid of this check and I made a brand new check, and let's say that I'm done working, I would then click on the icon again, and then I could either update server copy, which is the same thing as save, and that way I can continue working, but at least other people on the server can view my current iteration of the file. Or I can click on checkout. Let's pretend that I'm done working for the day. Let's type in revision 42 and then click on check-in. Now the file is uploading back to the server. Projects requires a very dedicated and stable internet connection. So if you lose internet while using a project, you might be able to check in a file once you get internet again. But if it bugs out, sometimes that happens. And well, that's why we can save local files of our projects if we need to, if we're working on them. And that's another reason why we shouldn't really be working on project files. We should use it as an archiving, uploading tool, a way for clients to upload, so you can give them permission to upload here. Now, what if we wanted to see who uploaded and when? We can click on this lock icon again and click on revision history. Every single time I checked in out of a file, we can see it, and we can see the comments that I wrote to. And it looks like I made that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy joke way too many times, but that's okay. And so I've been using this project since 2019. And not just me, but we can see that my colleague Jimmy also checked in and out of the file as well. That's projects. Now we have about 3 more minutes, so let me show you guys sessions really quickly because sessions is so important. So it's this icon right up here. Let me go into this session. And in sessions, you can look at the same PDF at the same time with other people, and you can work on it with them too. So when I, for example, delete these lines up here, other people can see everything that I'm doing if they were in the session with me. Right now, nobody's online, but I could have anybody go online and look at it with me. And then I could see their markups in real time. It's really, really cool. Now, there's 2 functions in sessions called replies and alerts, and that's the main thing that I wanted to show you guys. How do we communicate in sessions without having to call people and send them emails all the time? Well, what you can do is you can click on a markup, right-click on it, and click on reply. And this is a set of instructions. So I can say, please make this blue, for example. When I'm done typing, I press the escape key. Now this reply, if you have review 20, can be visible at the bottom right of your markup. So here's the reply, and if I mouse over it, it shows who wrote it and the text. So that's really, really useful. If you have review 19 or prior, then you can see replies by opening up your markups list and clicking on the markup. And below it, you'll see that it's indented to the right a little bit, and it says RE for reply. And then we can see the text under the comments column right here. Now, replies are great, but nobody knows that I wrote that. So what do? We need to actually do an alert. Now I have a fun surprise for you guys. Raquel has just signed into our session. So Raquel is here, and I'm going to show you guys alerts. And while I do, I'm actually going to alert her. She can also make a markup, and she can surprise us with a markup on one of the pages somewhere in this PDF set. And the fun part is I'll know exactly where it is in 2 seconds. I don't have to do any kind of exploratory navigation or investigation. So let me show you alerts first. So I'll click on this check, I'll right click on it, and I'm gonna mouse over Alert Attendee, and I'm gonna click on Choose. I can choose anybody that has already joined the session at least once. So in this case, Raquel is a great example, and I can do more than one person. I could highlight Jimmy, for example, and then I could basically do it for him as well. But let's just do it for Raquel. I'm gonna click OK, and immediately she's going to have her screen flash orange on the left side under the notifications area, and she'll get a new notification from me. Now, what's going to happen is, because Raquel has, oh yes, so look at this. I just looked in my records list, which because it shows every single markup that's been made. And Raquel joined the session at exactly 2:48 p.m. And she just added a text box. Now, where is the text box? I just have to click on it in the list. And it turns out that it's at the top of the screen. She hasn't filled it in yet, but she started to create it. And there it is. So I can see exactly what Raquel is doing. Oh, look, she just moved it there in real time. She's adjusting it right now. If you want to, Raquel, you can double click inside the text box and type text if you want to say hi to everybody. Well, and now she just added a line on top of it too. So this is great. Now let me show you guys what it's like to receive an alert. So in my notifications list, I've received alerts previously from Raquel, for example. So I'm going to click on this one that she gave me back. I believe this was about a year ago. Yeah, last October, October 29th. So if I click on this, it navigates and zooms in on the markup and it takes me to the page. It happens to also be on this first page, but it still selects it for me so I know exactly which markup she's talking about. And so that's how we can use replies as our set of instructions and alerts to notify somebody to please look at this markup. And because they understand what a reply is, they know to look at the replies. So for this one, it's this icon right here. Look at all these replies we've been making. We've been using this markup as a little test for a little while. Every single reply that I've written is here. So it's really, really nice. Let's go back to the record. It looks like Raquel has added some text. Oh, she said, hello, guys. Look at that. Hello, Raquel. Thank you so much for coming over to show us how this works. It's amazing how in Studio you can literally see what happens in real time. I'm actually going to go offline very quickly in the session. I know that we want to pause for questions soon, but we should have time. We have about 8 minutes. So let me just go offline quickly and show you guys how easy it is to work online and offline in the session. So I'm just going to go offline. The icon up here shows a little red dot, so I know that I'm offline. I can't see anything that Raquel does right now, and according to her, I'm also offline. Now, let's say that I make some markups, so I'm just going to make some lines. And on the bottom right of these markups, we have a little red dot, and if I mouse over it, it says pending upload. So these markups are currently locally saved in my temporary folder in Windows. I can't even save. There is no save button in Sessions. So there's no need, because even if I close the file and close Bluebeam Review and open it all again, it'll remember what I created and get it ready for me. Now, once I go back online, I want you guys to look and see what happens to these dots. They're going to all start to disappear in sequence very quickly. And when they do, you'll know that Raquel can see those lines. So now I'm going to go back online. And here we go. 1, 2, buckle my shoe. Perfect. So now Raquel can see them. Let's look and see if anything updated in the records list. Yeah, so all my lines just popped up there, and she deleted one of her old lines. Very good. All right. That's Studio Sessions and how we can communicate really nicely and work with people in Studio Sessions at the same time. Thank you, Raquel, for coming in impromptu to come and test this with me. That was great. All right, guys. We are a little over time in terms of our time for Q&A, but it's no big deal. Let me switch back to our PowerPoint, because more importantly, I want to talk to you guys about Govbug. So once again, I talked about it a little bit earlier. It stands for Government Bluebeam User Group, and it allows basically governments, municipalities, local organizations to work with a reseller such as us to basically have meetings. And we would have a meeting probably every 3 months or so at roughly that frequency. And in those meetings, we would be hosting those meetings. We would be in charge of the presentation. So I would be the presenter more than likely. And you guys can come up with topics or ideas that you want to talk about. And you guys can also present if you want to. So if you wanted to present alongside me and work together on a specific topic, on a specific workflow, that's what Govbug is for. And then we can share that with everybody, and whoever wants to join can join that meeting in particular. We can record it and have it available for future viewing. And that's it. So Govbug is really, really cool. If you guys want to join, please contact us. You can also email Bluebeam directly at communities@bluebeam.com. And that way they'll give you more information than I can give you too. and then we can make it official. So if you guys are interested, we want to start a Govbug here in South Florida. There isn't one yet. We have a competing one in Orange County in Orlando. So we definitely want to make one down here so that we can serve Miami even better. Okay, and now I think it's a good time for questions. So Alan, do we have any questions?
We do. Before we jump into questions, we did want to actually just put up a quick poll to see who might actually be interested in getting involved with a Govbug South Florida chapter. So if you can, just go ahead and vote for us just for a moment here.
That is a
Go ahead
good
and
poll, yes. We want to
vote.
get some feedback from you guys.
Yep. Okay, seeing some good numbers here. We'll give you guys another 10 seconds. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close this now. And looks like about 75% of you guys, maybe not so much right now, but a good 25%. And that is a good number based on the number of attendees we have today. So thank you guys for that information. Again, Ari will let you know about that soon. Okay. So Ari, a couple questions we had here. Can we use sessions and other markup functions on an iPad?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, definitely. You'll want to get the Review for iPad app. It costs about $10 on the App Store, and I think the same for the Android store. It's a really, really good program that's working pretty well. It has a slightly older interface. It's using the interface from 2017. But the thing about the iPad is it's perfect for connecting to sessions and projects. So I also have an iPad, and what I've done is I've connected it directly to my sessions and projects. I just logged in with my Bluebeam ID and it picked up on all my sessions and all my projects. So if you're going on the field and you were working in the office and you uploaded some files to a session, open up your iPad, go into your session, and you can basically not only view the files, but you'll have about, I would say, 50% of the markup tools that you need. The PC version is more developed and has more functionality, but the iPad version is great for markups and measurements and for some quick stuff that you need to do on the field. So yes, definitely get that iPad if you want to do that. Another option is you could always just get a special portable computer like a Surface Pro, for example, or a Panasonic tablet. And as long as they have Windows 10 or beyond, then you should be able to run Review no problem. Good question.
Great, perfect. All right, I had another one here. Let's discuss PDF submittal guidelines and standards.
That sounds good. If you want to discuss it in more detail, then yeah, contact us. I'd love to discuss it with you. In terms of submittals and standards that I've heard from our clients, I know that some municipalities require separate PDFs. I would say that if that's the case, I think that it's kind of like shooting yourself in the foot. I would recommend that you allow your clients to submit many different pages in one PDF set. It'll be a lot easier for you guys, and you can still validate that entire PDF set with one signature. You don't need every single page to be signed. And now, if you do need them all to be separate, not a problem, you can do that. And then third-party authentication is very common. So if you guys don't know what that is, try and work with those companies such as Identities and see how they work, see how they can help your clients to make the signing process a little bit easier. And that way they can also validate that they're real people. And so that's what it's really for. So yeah, contact us if you want to discuss it more.
Perfect. Okay, is the file in Studio on our local server or somewhere on the Review cloud?
Excellent question. So it's not, Studio projects and sessions cannot connect to private servers at this time. It's a feature that I'd love for Bluebeam to enable, but right now the servers are based on Amazon servers. I don't know exactly where they're housed. I think they're in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. So no. Now, what I was saying earlier about Studio sessions is the work that we're doing is local and on the server at the same time. It's kind of like using Dropbox or another cloud-based storage like Google Drive, for example. So what happens is that if you're offline, you can still do work on your end, and then as soon as you go online, it uploads directly to the session server. It is not located on your servers, and I'll let you guys know as soon as they implement that feature. I'd love for them to be able to connect to private servers. It's going to allow you guys to have peace of mind knowing exactly where your files are located. So I completely understand.
Perfect. Okay, any update on Review for Mac?
Yes. No, no updates yet. Review for Mac is discontinued any more patches. It's not very stable from what I've heard. It still has some bugs. Bluebeam was having some issues with it. The best news is get parallels. Bootcamp is okay. There's also, I believe it's called Wine. These programs will help you to have a Windows-based OS at the same time with your Mac. And Parallels in particular makes it like a program, which I find to be really cool. I would definitely recommend using that so that you can have Bluebeam Review for Windows on your Mac. You just need to have a kind of powerful PC in order to run it at the same time as other programs. But I've worked with people that don't have the best computers and they were doing fine. They were able to open Parallels, use Bluebeam Review, and they still had it on their Mac. So that's the best compromise that we have right now. If anything changes, I'll let you guys know in a future webinar.
Perfect. And the last one we'll get into, can you create submittal review stamps on iPad?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't looked into it yet. I will actually follow up with you on that one. I'll open up my iPad a little bit later this afternoon, and I'll see if it's possible. I think that you can, but I'll have to double check that. I would still recommend making the stamp on a Windows computer. I mean, really, it's usually a scan of an image, or it's a digital stamp that was maybe created in AutoCAD or another program. So as long as you have that image file, you should be able to just associate it with your signature and sign it. But I'll follow up with you later on if you contact us so that we have your email and your phone number, and I can call you back perhaps tomorrow, and I'll let you know for sure. That's a great question.
Okay. I had one more question come in that I'll do, but we are out of time. Can you integrate Bluebeam into any existing permitting applications? If so, have you done this for any other clients?
That is a really good question. Yes, we know that Bluebeam Review works well with Energov and that it installs plugins into that software, so that should work out for you guys. It installs plugins in so many different programs. When it comes to permitting programs, I don't know any others off the top of my head, and I haven't implemented this yet with a client. We had a few clients that were interested in doing that, and they're working basically with those programs directly. And as long as the program says, yes, the plugin works with us, no problem. So ask ahead of time just to make sure before you commit to getting Review. But yes, Review installs plugins in Microsoft Word, Outlook, Excel, PowerPoint, AutoCAD, Revit, so many different programs. So more than likely, it'll work with almost all of the permitting programs that are commonly used. So good question.
All right, perfect. All right, and so Ari, if you can go over to that next slide. So thank
I
you
think
all
I'm
for
having monitor
attending
issues.
today. So our blog is live. You can check it out at the link on the screen now, ddscad.com/knowledge-center/Bluebeam. As we mentioned before, Bluebeam review training is available. For more information on that, please contact us or check our website, ddscad.com. And at ddscad.com, there will be actual information for other upcoming events and webinars if you check in the events section. And if you do have any additional questions, concerns, anything like that, please give us a call at 305-445-6480 and or email us at info@ddscad.com. All right, thank you all for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Ari.
Thanks, Alan. Take care, everybody.